Dust clouds drifted lazily across the surface of Miris 7, a dead moon circling a forgotten gas giant. Once a refueling outpost, now it was little more than a tomb for a war nobody fully understood. The Voran swarm had come without warning. Chitinous, relentless, coordinated beyond belief, and the Galactic Coalition had responded with overwhelming force. Or so they thought. Sergeant Luke Varn sat half-buried in the rubble of a collapsed comms tower, blood crusting over a torn uniform, one leg twisted beneath debris. His sniper rifle lay beside him, split at the barrel from a plasma blast. Smoke coiled from the distant remains of the landing bay where the Coalition's best soldiers had made their last stand. None of them survived. They hadn't expected to lose. No one ever did, especially not the galactic elites. Reckless, loud, and over-equipped, Luke muttered, voice hoarse from thirst. His helmet was cracked, the HUD flickering with static. He reached up to shut it off. The tech had stopped being useful hours ago. The aliens had called it a forward purge operation. Drop in, cleanse the surface, and signal for cleanup. It was supposed to take 8 minutes. Instead, it had taken 3 for the Voran to swarm over the Coalition's vanguard. They'd never even reached fallback positions. From his shattered perch in the tower, Luke had watched it unfold, Voran warriors moving like synchronized blades, cutting down alien elite troops like children playing at war. The galactic soldiers had been armored, enhanced, and genetically selected over centuries to become the perfect warriors. But perfect for the wrong kind of war. Luke's breath rasped through clenched teeth. He shifted, trying not to scream as pain flared up his leg. His sidearm was gone, lost in the blast. All that remained was a ruined rifle and a half-charged scope module dangling from exposed wires. He closed his eyes and thought of Earth. Back home, he had been nothing special. A farm boy from Nevada who'd scored high enough in ballistics to be shipped to sniper training. No bio-enhancements. No neural dampeners. Just patience. Earth's military hadn't won wars with tech. They'd won them with timing. One shot, one kill. Wait. Watch. Breathe. Galactic Command had never understood that. To them, Earth was a relic, useful for manual labor, maybe some defensive garrison work. The fact that humans had fought 1,000 years of their own brutal wars didn't matter to species who'd evolved past bloodshed. Most of the Coalition saw humans as obsolete. Yet here he was, still breathing. He heard the distant clicking before he saw them. Voran scouts, 5 of them, cutting to the fallen barricades like ants scouring a carcass. They moved with brutal grace, each gesture mirrored with mathematical precision. One stopped, antennae twitching, scanning the wreckage. They were searching for survivors. Luke's fingers instinctively reached for his rifle. Broken. Still, the scope module lit up faintly. Through the cracked lens, he could make out a shimmering distortion across the battlefield. A larger Voran, bulkier, encased in organic plating. A commander, maybe even a node leader. The way the others pivoted around it told him everything. Kill that one and the rest might flinch. But his rifle was a useless shell. He blinked, fighting off the encroaching fog of blood loss. His body was failing, but his mind remained sharp. The sniper's eye, the gift of stillness. He counted the seconds between the scouts' movements, tracked their steps. Patterns emerged. Even now, the swarm obeyed unchanging rhythms. They were confident, too confident. Luke remembered the briefing 2 weeks ago. Coalition brass dismissing the Voran as biological nuisances. The meeting had ended with laughter when someone asked if human snipers would be deployed. For what? Picking off bugs from a mile away? This is a war strategy, not hunting seasons. He had wanted to argue, had almost raised his hand. But he didn't. What would it matter? Earth was on the bottom rung. Another scout passed beneath the tower remains. Luke's fingers tightened on the remains of his rifle. The scope still responded. Maybe, just maybe, if he could salvage enough from the rifle's lower chamber, reroute power from the plasma cell to the targeting processor, he could... No, not now. Not yet. He was too exposed. He let his head fall back against the stone, eyes scanning the smog-choked sky. The Coalition had long since abandoned the moon. No reinforcements. No med-evac. He was alone. But something else coiled inside him. Not desperation. Not panic. Resolve. There were stories passed around Earth's sniper schools. Whispered legends of the ghost of Jalvern, the sharpshooter of the Sandbelt, the one-way gunner Titan's cliffs. Men and women who turned impossible odds by standing still and watching. Luke hadn't believed in them. Not really. But now, at the edge of his own breath, he understood them. He wasn't going to die here. Not before he showed the galaxy what one wounded human could do with silence and steel. In the distance, the Voron node shifted. It moved toward the shattered coalition flag embedded in the outpost command ridge. A show of victory. Declaration of dominance. The scouts began to form up. Luke adjusted the scope, gingerly twisting the calibration dial. A faint glow flickered across the fractured lens. Power was fading fast. He had maybe one chance. Maybe. His finger hovered over the manual trigger coil. Not yet. Patience. Breathe. Wait for the moment the wind died and the world stilled. The node turned toward his direction, unaware. No sound, no motion betrayed Luke's presence. The shot would come, and with it a lesson. He smiled to the blood on his lips. Let them keep ignoring Earth. They wouldn't forget him. Not after this. Then he went quiet and began to aim. Luke Voron lay still beneath the ruined tower, invisible to everything but the cold. His fingers trembled slightly as he adjusted the salvage scope, more from fatigue than fear. The wind outside howled across the barren moon, sweeping ash and char fragments in aimless spirals. Overhead, the dim light of Miris 7's parent gas giant pulsed through the smog like a sickly heartbeat. He'd been trained for this, hours of immobility, calculating bullet drop, gauging wind resistance, waiting for a shot that might never come. But nothing in his training had prepared him for being the last living soldier on a forgotten rock, hunted by creatures bred to swarm and kill without hesitation. He exhaled slowly and took stock of what he had. A rifle barrel fuse at the tip, a power cell drained to its last sliver, and a scope that only worked when tapped just right. His left leg was swelling, the bone likely fractured in 3 places. He had no painkillers, no food, and 23 drops of water left in the reserve tube built into his collar. That would last 2 hours. Maybe. What he did have was time, enough to make one shot count. He studied the scope readout. The Voron were beginning to fortify their position. Organic towers grew like cancer from the crater walls, thick with resin and twitching with larval threads. It was a forward nest, and once complete, it would serve as a launch point for more incursions. In less than a day, this moon would become their new hive. Luke zoomed in on the central spire. The node leader was there again, taller than the others, movement slightly delayed, its eyes glowing a softer green. A commander class, possibly the coordinating intelligence for the local swarm. The kill would be difficult. The target moved erratically in the distance, just under 1,900 meters, was pushing the edge of a rifle designed for mid-range combat. He'd need perfect conditions. He'd need time he didn't have. Still, he watched. Watching was what snipers did. The scope flickered again. He tapped the casing, whispering a low curse. The heat from his hand was enough to prompt another burst of power. A blur of static cleared, and the target sharpened into focus. He counted the seconds between its shifts in position. 10 seconds still, 3 seconds pacing. Every time it turned, it paused briefly to emit a pulse, likely some form of command relay. That was the window. 3 seconds. 3 seconds to end the battle. He laid the rifle across his chest and closed his eyes for a moment. Darkness pressed to the edge of his thoughts, trying to slip in, seduce him into rest. But sleep meant death. He clenched his jaw and stayed present. His mind wandered to the old sniper range in Fort Argus back on Earth. Red sand, thin air, targets set a mile out with wind that screamed like banshees. His instructor, Captain Tenor, had been brutal but fair. She'd hammered one lesson home more than any other. The shot is the last step. The real weapon is your patience. Luke had listened. He'd become her best. He felt the weight of her expectations now, heavier than the shattered rifle. What would she say as she saw him lying in a crater of dead soldiers and burnout metal? Probably nothing. Just that look. The one that meant, you know what to do. He opened his eyes. The scope was still active. Across the field, a pair of Voran scouts had begun dragging alien corpses into a pile, harvesting biomass for reabsorption. One of them moved erratically, twitchy, limping, possibly wounded. Interesting. The hive didn't usually waste resources on the injured. Maybe the command node was struggling to maintain cohesion. Maybe killing it now wouldn't just end the battle. It could collapse the entire local network. Luke began dismantling the lower casing of the rifle, hands moving by instinct. He removed the fuse barrel and connected the energy core directly to the stabilizer rod. Without a barrel, there would be no rifling, no spin. But it didn't matter. The shot would be short, straight, and violent. If it hit, he stripped wires from the scope, bypassing damaged circuits. Sparks popped against the skin, but he kept working, wincing as he twisted a connector back into place with the edge of his dog tag. The makeshift weapon hummed low, a wounded animal ready to lash out. Something rumbled far off. Distant thunder. No, not thunder. Dropships. Too far to help, but close enough to signal that the coalition was preparing to leave orbit. He was on his own, and they weren't coming back. He ran a final calibration. The scope flashed one last time and held. His breathing slowed. Pulse softened. Pain dulled. 3 seconds. He studied the node leader again. The creature was alone, its guards having shifted to defend the high perimeter. It pulsed once. Shifted. Paused. Luke tensed. The shot would expose his position. If he missed, he would die within moments. But he didn't intend to miss. He stared through the scope until everything else fell away. The war, the blood, the silence. All that remained was movement, timing, and breath. He could see the bullet's path before pulling the trigger, could feel in the curl of his finger and the set of his shoulder. Wait. The node turned again. Now. He didn't fire. Not yet. He let the crosshairs drift, lowering the weapon as his body gave a small shudder. Something in his gut told him it wasn't time. Not yet. He'd feel it when it was. A sniper's truth was in the silence before a kill, that breathless moment before the world changed. And that moment hadn't come. Not yet. He lay back once more and let the rifle rest beside him, knowing he would rise again when the time was right. The battle wasn't over, not while one shot remained. And that shot was his. The silence stretched like a taut wire, humming in Luke's ears. His breath came in shallow pulls as he adjusted the improvised rifle against his shoulder. Every movement sent a lance of pain through his leg, but he welcomed it. Pain meant awareness, and awareness was life. He had entered the sniper zone, a headspace where time lost meaning, and the world shrank to a single point of consequence. The Voran node leader stood alone near the pulsing heart of the hive structure. Towering over the workers, it radiated command energy, a biological nexus through which orders flowed like blood through veins. Its armored carapace shimmered faintly in the moon's ambient light, and it moved with the certainty of a creature that had never known failure. Luke studied it through the scope's fractured lens, tracking its rhythm. 10 seconds still, 3 seconds pacing, then a turn. Always the same. Predictable. The hive's strength was also its flaw, utter dependency on pattern and cohesion. One well-placed disruption could unravel it. He tapped the side of the rifle's casing. A small power indicator flickered green, then orange, enough juice for one amplified shot. The makeshift weapon wouldn't survive it, and neither would he if the position was compromised. But if the shot landed, if he severed the hive's mind in those 3 seconds, the rest might collapse under its own momentum. He steadied his breathing. Inhale, hold, exhale. The world outside dulled. No more wind, no more crumbling stone or chittering alien voices. Just the scope and the silent rhythm of a battlefield waiting to change. The node turned again. 3 seconds. Luke's finger curled against the trigger. 1. The rifle barked, not with thunderclap, but with a high-pitched shriek, like metal tearing through a scream. The recoil sent shockwaves through his body. The blast lit the inside of the tower ruin with pale blue light, then left it in darkness. 2. Through the dying flicker of his scope, he watched the round slice the air. The shot flew low, then arched, compensating for the uneven gravitational pull of the moon's fractured crust. The makeshift calibration, The calculations in his head, the twitch in his gut that had told him to wait, they all aligned. The bullet didn't just hit the node leader. It annihilated it. The round pierced the eye's socket, just as the creature emitted another command pulse. The energy resonated with the round's explosive charge, causing a chain reaction. The nodes had burst like a melon under pressure, bioluminescent core spraying in a wide arc across the command deck. 3. The silence returned, but it was not the sniper's silence anymore. It was the sound of a system collapsing. Across the battlefield, Voran warriors halted mid-stride. Their limbs twitched erratically. Some dropped to their knees. Others collapsed outright, their connection to the hive mind abruptly severed. Confused, directionless, the once-coordinated swarm devolved into chaos. A few staggered forward, emitting guttural clicks that went unanswered. Then they began to retreat, sporadically at first, then en masse. Luke lay still, blinking slowly, trying to hold on to consciousness. Smoke wafted from the rifle's melted coil. The weapon now fused the stone beneath him. His shoulder burned. His leg was worse, numb now, which frightened him more than the pain had. He lifted his head with effort, just enough to glimpse the crater below. Where once there had been order, there was only panic. The Voran nest throbbed erratically, spires collapsing under their own weight. Flames licked at the hive structure, and bio-constructs began to dissolve into pools of twitching matter. The node's death had triggered a cascade, one he suspected neither side had anticipated. Far beyond the hive, bright flashes signaled the arrival of coalition ships. Dropships, cruisers, fast response units. They were coming back now that the danger had passed. Too late. Luke let his head fall back. His vision blurred the edges, narrowing to a tunnel of faint light and shadow. His mind floated above the battlefield, detached, satisfied. He had done what none of the genetically enhanced warriors, with all their armor and arrogance, could do. Alone, wounded, forgotten, he had ended the fight. 3 seconds. That was all it had taken. Footsteps crunched through the rubble nearby. Not Voran. They were too disorganized now. These were heavier, metallic. Coalition soldiers in exosuits, weapons raised. Voices filtered through the smoke. Contact, one life form. Human signature confirmed. Medic, we've got a survivor. Luke didn't move. He couldn't, but he heard them, felt their hands as they brushed debris aside, as they lifted the remnants of the rifle and stared at it in stunned silence. One of them muttered something in a language Luke didn't understand, but the tone was universal. Awe. One of the soldiers knelt beside him. Sergeant Luke Varn. He managed a small nod. You did this. He looked at the wreckage of the hive, at the retreating swarm, at the broken rifle fused into the stone. 3 seconds. The sniper's answer was a whisper, just loud enough to be heard over the dying wind. Yeah. Then the black took him. Darkness pressed in like water, heavy and absolute. Luke drifted through it, weightless, thoughtless, until a sudden jolt tore him upward. Pain light, the unmistakable scent of antiseptic. He gasped. A ceiling of polished steel came into view, lights embedded in neat rows. Distant voices. Machinery humming. He was alive. The bed beneath him was smooth, hospital standard, the kind found on high-tier coalition ships. Cold air hissed gently from vents above, and somewhere a monitor beeped in time with his heart. His limbs were restrained not cruelly, but to keep him still. A soft, synthetic wrap encased his ruined leg. The rest of his body felt stitched together from fragments. He turned his head slowly. A woman stood at the foot of his bed, her uniform crisp, her stance measured. Coalition, officer class. Her eyes, however, were not cold. They watched him not as a subordinate, but as something else, something uncertain. You're awake, she said, voice clipped but not unkind. Sergeant Luke Varn, Earthborn, human infantry, 0 augmentations. Sniper designation, Kestrel 9. Luke's throat burned. Still me. She stepped forward. Captain Ryle, Command Intelligence Corps. You're aboard the Vigilant Spear. We recovered you 2 days after the engagement on Miris 7. You've been in induced stasis for 19 cycles. Is the hive gone? She gave a slight nod. Completely. After you killed the node leader, the swarm disintegrated. We estimate 78% loss of cohesion across all Vorin units in that sector. The remaining elements fled into deep orbit. Maris, 7 has been reclaimed. Luke tried to sit up, but immediately regretted it. Pain stabbed through his ribs. Ryle stepped closer. Don't push it. You're still healing. The limb reconstruction will take time, but you'll walk again. He let his head fall back. You left us. Her expression didn't change. We didn't know. The orbital scan showed no surviving coalition signals. We assumed complete annihilation. I was still transmitting, he said, voice low. She didn't respond for a long time. Then, with a quiet breath, she said, You were. They both let the silence settle. For Luke, it was enough that someone acknowledged it. Ryle stepped to the side, and a holographic panel appeared, displaying a still image, one of the collapsed Vorin spires, blackened and broken. Do you understand what you've done? She asked. The command kill you executed. No one believed it was possible with conventional means, let alone by a human. Alone, with no support. Luke stared at the image, then shrugged slightly. It was just a shot. Her eyes narrowed. No, it was a statement. She tapped the panel, shifting to a new screen. Reports, names, transcripts. Since your extraction, there's been a reevaluation of Earth, of human combat doctrine, of the role your people play in this war. Luke gave a dry chuckle. Let me guess. Suddenly, Earth isn't obsolete anymore. We're reassessing, she admitted. Your profile has been circulated through every command chain in the core systems. Your shot has become a case study, a symbol. Some are calling it the 3-second turn. She gave a wry smile. There's talk of reinstating human sniper divisions. He looked away. So now we matter. No, she said softly. You always did. We just forgot what humans were capable of. He closed his eyes, unsure whether he felt vindicated or hollow. The war wasn't over. There would be more Vorin, more battlefields like Maris. 7. He hadn't ended anything. He delayed the inevitable. And yet something had changed. Ryle seemed to sense the weight in his silence. She reached into her uniform and pulled out a small black chip, placing it on the tray beside his bed. When you're cleared for duty, this is your reassignment. You'll be offered command position, training sniper teams, consulting on hybrid tactical doctrine, or you can go home. Full honors. No one would blame you. Luke stared at the chip, the future condensed into a sliver of plastic and data. Do I have a say in what gets written about Maris? He asked. She tilted her head. You'll have input. He nodded slowly. Then tell them the truth. That it wasn't about heroism, or vengeance, or glory. It was about silence, the kind that only comes before a shot that changes everything. She studied him a long moment, then nodded, understood. He drifted again for a while, not into sleep, but into thought. The image of the shattered hive lingered behind his eyes, the echo of the trigger pull, the silence after. Not a void, but a promise. When Ryle turned to leave, Luke's voice stopped her. One more thing. She paused, looking back. Don't let them forget. Next time the aliens underestimate Earth, remind them. We only need 3 seconds. She gave a tight nod and left without another word. Luke closed his eyes once more, a faint smile touching his lips. They had ignored Earth. They wouldn't make that mistake again.